Good evening, ESBR Boxing. Elliot here. You're joined, or you have the pleasure, I suppose, solely of me this evening, taking you through what is the staggering, surprising, I suppose, reaction to what we've just witnessed. Anthony Yard versus Artur Beterbiev. 19 wins now for Beterbiev, 19 KOs, eighth round stoppage, devastating, but one hell of a fight. So yeah, let's just break it down. Myself, we want to commune through this screen with yourselves. So yeah, so I suppose performance wise, let's get start straight into it. I mean, it's hard in some ways to convey the emotion going through this. I had prediction coming into this fight of Yard being stopped, frankly, early, sort of within 5 rounds. When it started off though, hell of a performance from him. Looked sharp, didn't need the first couple of rounds, especially. Looked very, very quick. I think it was only the first about maybe round three or four that Beterbiev started tagging him. But again, some heart on him as well. Hit Beterbiev with a lot of shots as well. The uppercut especially was working well. But again, I think the heavy shots that Beterbiev was throwing, obviously affected Yarde. Obviously had a swelling, well underneath and across his right eye, but he managed to cut Beterbiev as well to the left eye. So yeah, I mean, hell of a performance. 8 rounds with someone who's stopped every single one of his opponents, going through from sort of 4 rounders when he first turned pro, into guys like Smith Jr., this Ukrainian fellow I'm going to have to pronounce now, Godovic. Say that quickly. No, stopping everyone essentially. Yeah, I think deserves a lot of credit. Beterbiev, there was a lot of talk, I suppose, coming into this that he's now 38 years old. Would age catch up with him? Obviously, Yard's conditioning's never been questioned, so would Yard be able to essentially sort of step on him a bit? Maybe try and just use that to his advantage, weather a storm, but then also kind of with obviously the KO percentage that he has, stop him as well. So that was the kind of intrigue going into it. But I think what we saw tonight, there wasn't particularly much age showing in the generalship or the general physicality or even the output necessarily of Beterbiev. So yeah, commendable performance from Yard, commendable performance from Beterbiev. I suppose we're looking at it. I mean, let's talk about the judges briefly. Judges had Yard up 2 rounds, so that I think a couple of them had it seven. Going from the seventh round, with Yard being two up. So I'm not sure necessarily how that can be rationalized. Frankly, I think yeah, I just think you know, um, yeah, yeah. Cut this bit here, mate. Don't we? Splice back here, mate. Splice back here. Talk about judges. Okay, let's talk about the judges briefly. So going into the eighth or in the eighth round, obviously you're seeing it on Twitter, but also officially as well. Two of the judges had Yard up in the fight. I'm not necessarily convinced personally that should have been as it was. Whether that's kind of the home advantage, as it were. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen some outrageous cards, both to both extremes in some ways. Some people were having it sort of 5-0, 6-0, going down in as the fight was progressing to Yard, which is obviously outrageous. Similarly, other people were sort of going 6-7-0, Beterbiev. So it was a hard one to judge, I suppose, in places. I think you could say that there were rounds where Yard was busier and was also kind of landing a bit, but was shipping heavier shots when Beterbiev did throw. So a tough one, but yeah, I'm not convinced that frankly that Yard deserved to be up on the cards at the time of the stoppage. But I suppose yeah, next for both men. So where do they go from here? Well, I think if you take let's take Beterbiev first. So his post fight press conference, he was saying that he wants Bivol. There was talk obviously about him having to fight Callum Smith. Some people are suggesting that there might be some sort of super card taking place at Anfield, with the Eubank Jr. Liam Smith fight on that card as well. Beterbiev's obviously himself said he wants Bivol, and why not? That'd be a unification fight. Beterbiev holding the IBF, WBC, WBO titles, and obviously Bivol holding the WBA. I think Bivol's also quite keen for it, and I think, to be honest with you, from a sort of boxing fan, boxing purist perspective, that would be the fight that we'd want to see. I don't think there's any. Oh, don't get me wrong. I think Callum Smith's cooked himself well up at light heavy. But I just think if you look at the run that Bivol has been on, obviously the Canelo victory was outstanding, given that it was on, it was against Canelo, and he managed to win on points, which obviously shows you how dominant that performance was. But looked very smooth, looked brilliant throughout as well. So I think that's the fight we necessarily want to see. Callum Smith, on the other hand, as you know, has come into that sort of light heavy division. Couple of all right wins, I suppose you could say, but again, nothing really that would sit there and go, okay, yeah, let's throw him in with well, Beterbiev, frankly, as a preferred opponent over Bivol. Um, I'd like to see personally maybe Callum Smith take on even someone like sort of Joe Smith Jr. See what he can do there, before sort of stepping in and trying to contest for those titles. Anthony Yard, on the other hand, has, I think, equipped himself remarkably well tonight. I think, like I said, a lot of people were, well, a lot of fans essentially were fans, a lot of consumers of boxing on a regular basis were suggesting he had little to no chance in prevailing. So in many ways, he's transcended the expectations of a lot of people. And to his credit, to his esteemed credit, where would he like to go next? To be honest with you, I'd like to see him fight. I mean, it's obviously those domestic fights, Boatsi is a guy that you'd like to see him fight. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Smith Jr. either. He's equipped himself tonight, shows that he's obviously up at that level, but that he can do well at that level. Not necessarily, I wouldn't like to see him basically fight someone like Bivol. I think Bivol will beat him as well. But I think there's some good fights actually out there for Anthony Yard. I think he deserves a few bigger, a few bigger nights and a few bigger paydays. He's had a bit of a rough shake of it going against obviously Beterbiev and Kovalev away as it were, and getting stopped. So showed tremendous heart tonight. I still like to see him maybe in those domestic fights. Happily see him in there, like I said, against someone like Smith Jr., even a Ramirez. Ramirez looked clumsy last time when he fought Bivol. So I think anything of that nature would be great. Would be great to see. So bright futures, I think, for well, I say bright futures. Beterbiev's 38. I think maybe the second oldest champion behind Golovkin. So really, we're sitting there going, he's probably got maybe what, 2, 3, maybe 4 fights left. So if you want to see, yeah, obviously Bivol, maybe throw him in with Callum Smith, see where he wants to go. But I think, yeah, some big fights for both guys still out there on the world scene. So yeah, hell of a fight. As I said, I'm going to wrap this up because I am, as aforementioned, doing this on my own. I think the other lads, if you guys are familiar with any of our content, ESBR, which hopefully you are, considering you're watching this. You'll be aware, obviously, that the team is really composite from a plethora, really, of attractive and virile young men who are no doubt, I suppose, doing what these men of these ages do in city centres around the UK currently. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. Elliot Stott is at the event this evening. He will be bringing us further content, interviews of that nature, reaction as it comes in. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And then obviously we've got content coming up next week for future fights and future events. But I just wanted to sort of sign off really and say, great evening. As boxing fans, and boxing, I suppose, aficionados to a certain degree, or boxing enthusiasts is what I should have said. We are often mistreated. We often see some fairly poor products we have to chew through, but tonight you are rewarded. When you see a fight of that nature, you are truly rewarded for what you're spectating and for what you're purchasing and what you're choosing to I suppose, intake from a media perspective. Similarly with Lee Wood and Conlon last time out. So thank you very much, guys, for watching. Hopefully I've been as nourishing, or at least partly nourishing, as the fight that took place tonight. Let me know if you agree with anything I've said. Let me know if you don't, frankly. And I'll just part by way here of saying congratulations to both guys tonight. Congratulations to Anthony Yard, furthered himself, even though he hasn't become a world champion. And congratulations to Beterbiev, announcing himself further on the British stage. Hopefully some massive nights ahead. Check it out, guys. Stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching, as always. And hope you have a good evening and speak to you soon. Goodbye.